When you think about the space race, what comes to mind? For me, it's those iconic images of heroic astronauts, the tense countdowns, and humanity taking that one giant leap. It's this incredible story of courage and triumph. But what if I told you there's a whole other chapter to that story? A chapter that's almost always left out.
Yeah, behind all the celebrated headlines, the reality was a whole lot grimmer. One source I read described the earliest days of the space program with this chilling phrase. It hints at something brutal, something violent, that's a world away from the clean, heroic story we all think we know.
So, that's what we're going to dig into. What was the real cost of reaching for the stars? What did those first frantic steps on our journey to space really look like? And who, or maybe what, paid the ultimate price for all that progress? Well, long before any humans strapped themselves into a rocket, the very first pioneers of spaceflight weren't human at all. They were a whole series of primates, the first test subjects in this high-stakes gamble to see if a living thing could even survive leaving our atmosphere. It all starts with these names that sound so normal. Albert II was a rhesus monkey, and in June of 1949, he actually became the first primate to reach space, soaring 83 miles up. He proved it was possible to survive the trip, at least on the way up. And things moved fast. I mean, unbelievably fast. Just 3 months after Albert II's flight, another monkey, Albert III, was launched into the darkness. A really deadly pattern was starting to form, and quickly. After him came Albert IV, another rhesus monkey, sent on yet another flight into the black. You can just feel the desperation in this relentless pace, can't you? This desperate search for data, for any tiny bit of assurance that a human could eventually follow that same path. And this first round of tests wrapped up with Albert V in 1951. The way one source put it just stuck with me, that these animals were haphazardly threw at the cosmos. For these pioneers, there was no triumphant return. There was no parade. There was only the launch. Okay, so here's the really crucial point. None of these missions were successful. Not a single one. They weren't just tests. They were this consistent, heartbreaking string of failures, and almost every single one ended in the exact same way. Let's take a look at how this played out. Just look at this timeline. The compression here is startling. You've got 3 launches jammed into 1949 alone, then another in 51. It's just this rapid-fire series, and each one ends in tragedy. They barely had time to figure out what went wrong with one failure before they were sending another animal towards the very same fate. And the fate they all met was brutal. The source material uses this horrifically clinical term to describe what happened to these primates. They were liquefied on impact. This wasn't a peaceful end. It was the catastrophic, violent result of a high-speed collision with the Earth. So you have to ask, why did this keep happening? Was it some complex series of different mechanical problems on each flight? Well, no. The answer is actually shockingly simple. It was one single recurring technological failure, a fatal flaw in the plan for getting them home safe. The source puts it so bluntly. The reason for all these catastrophic failures, it all came down to the re-entry system. The parachutes, the one piece of gear that was supposed to guarantee a safe landing, were described as being like tissue paper. They just fell apart. They couldn't handle the stress of re-entry. And this right here just captures the whole problem perfectly. On every single one of these flights, Albert II, III, and IV, the mission was a success right up until the very end. The expectation, the hope, was a safe return. The reality, every single time, was a catastrophic parachute failure that led to that violent impact. So all of this, it builds to a much bigger, much more difficult question. This hidden history, it forces us to look past the technical screw-ups and really confront the tough ethical choices that were made in the name of science. What does this story actually tell us about the price of progress? Well, here's the unavoidable takeaway. That amazing, celebrated story of humanity reaching for the stars, the one we tell in our history books, it was built on a foundation of animal sacrifice. The path for those famous human astronauts was paved by the tragic, forgotten flights of these first pioneers. And that leaves us with this really difficult question that goes way beyond the space race, right? We kind of accept that progress often demands sacrifice, but this hidden chapter of history forces us to ask,
Who gets to decide what that sacrifice is, and who or what is asked to pay that price?